Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour.
She's been like that ever since the fire swamp. It's my father's failing health that's upsetting her.
Of course. The king died that very night. And before the following dawn, Buttercup and Humperdinck were married. And at noon she met her subjects again, this time as their queen.
My father's final words were...
Hold it, Grandpa. You read that wrong. She doesn't marry Humperdinck, she marries Wesley. I'm just sure of it. After all that Wesley did for her, if she didn't marry him, it wouldn't be fair.
Well, who says life is fair? Where is that written? Life isn't always fair.
I'm telling you, you're messing up the story. Now get it right.
Do you want me to go on with this?
Yes.
All right, then. No more interruptions. At noon, she met her subjects again, this time as their queen.
My father...
About 10 months ago, I guess, I started thinking about what am I going to preach on once I finish Luke? Where do we go from there? As you know, one of the things I try to do is provide you with a balanced, healthy diet of spiritual food. We will do the New Testament, then we'll do the Old Testament. We'll do different types of literature. We'll do different places in Scripture. We'll jump from Gospels to the epistles. Because God gave us His Word to grow us, to train us up, to allow us and help us to navigate this life. And so we just finished a long stint, probably a year, a little over a year and a half, well, a little under a year and a half, in the Gospel of Luke, looking at Luke's argument and Luke's design of who Jesus is. So I wanted to go to the Old Testament, and I ended up choosing this book for several reasons. And I don't know which one is the higher reason. One reason is I'm getting older. It's the first time I've ever dealt with this book we're going to look at this morning. And as I'm getting older, it's not just me, it's you. And part of the thing is I think that I've lived life long enough to kind of tackle this book. The second reason is I've never been in this book. I mean, I had to go through it, blaze through it in seminary to write a paper or something. But I've never taken time to sit with this book because I got to tell you, a lot of people fear this book because it's not a happy book. It's in the Old Testament. It's the book of Job. So we're going to be talking about that book probably for the next, I don't know, it could be 7 weeks, it could be 12, 13 weeks. It just depends on where the story takes us. Job is a microcosm of the unfolding drama of life. And our lives are filled with disappointments. And I think for most of us, we can handle disappointments. But Job isn't about being merely disappointed. Job is about unfairness. When unfairness comes into our lives, that whole sense that we have been in some ways cheated or violated. In fact, I'm only going to do a couple of these, but what does unfairness look like? It looks like unequal treatment. You know, if you have more than one kid, inevitably they'll say, well, she got to do that and I didn't get to do that. Unequal treatment. And you hear from the mouths of kids all the time, just like in our video clip from Princess Bride. That's not fair. Even a child has that sense of what's fair or not fair. Unequal opportunity. Other people get an opportunity that you don't. That feeling of unfairness there. Unequal reward. I did the same amount of work. I did the same requirements, but they got something that I didn't. Unequal punishment, especially for a kid. You know, we have like 5 kids, and they would see someone get away with something, and then they thought they could get away with it. And no, you're not getting away from it. Well, they got away from it. Well, they're not my kid. You don't get away with that. Favoritism. Other people being, the rules are applied differently. Some people are favored over others. Being taken advantage of. Being used. All of those sense of unfairness. If you've ever felt that way, if you wanted to cry, that's not fair, then Job's a book for you. And the final analysis, unfairness, is when it looks like life's scales are tipped away from you, against you. And it just feels like at times that God doesn't know you're even in the room. And so the book of Job, as we get into it, there's a couple of things about it. There's a couple of things I've never seen before. One, I knew most of this, but there's one thing I'll tell you that I saw it in a different light. It's probably the earliest literature of any kind that we have. One of the earliest stories that we have in all of human history. And people that are really into literature really put it right up there in the top of their list as far as beautiful human literature. In fact, we don't even know who the author was. Some people suggest Moses might have been the author. Some people think Job himself. I'll just tell you, I don't know. I don't know who wrote this. Its place in the Bible. If it's so early, how come it comes so late in the left side of the book in the Old Testament? Because Job was probably alive. Most people peg him as being alive around the time of Abraham. Maybe a little earlier, but around that time. And there's reasons for that we'll see later on in the book. But why is it put so much later in the book? It's because most of the book is poetry. It's looked at as poetry, the middle section. It has a prologue and an epilogue, and in the middle is there's poetry there. And so it takes some work. In fact, if you take advanced Hebrew, this is the book you study. It's some of the hardest Hebrew that you can tackle in the whole Old Testament. Now you'll see why I've stayed away from it so long. And the subject matter is tough. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. I want everything to go smooth. In fact, I am a firm believer in this. And I got this phrase. We had a Boy Scout unit here, a Boy Scout troop here. And I had two kids that were part of that. And I learned a phrase they would use with those young men. And it was this: learning will occur. In other words, you only have to do something wrong one time and you'll figure it out. You'll kind of get, that rope will loosen and you'll fall. He's, I need to know how to tie that rope. The whole point was that there are consequences that follow our actions. And I like that. I like a world where the consequence follows the action. Action occurs, consequence right out. I like that kind of world. Job tells us that world is not 100% the way it's presented. Job tells us the world doesn't necessarily act like that all the time. How do we read the book of Job? One of the things that I came across, and again, I've been gathering works and reading in Job since I knew I was going to do something about the last 5 or 6 months. I've been doing some reading. And one of the most fascinating theories on the book of Job is that it was a play. It was a drama that was performed. Now, when I say that, some people say, wait a minute, are you saying Job wasn't? No, Job was a real person. We're going to be introduced to him this morning. The reason I say he was a real person is that in Ezekiel chapter 14, twice he's mentioned with Noah and Daniel. Go to the New Testament. In the book of James, at the end, James chapter 5, James talks about Job. He mentions Job. Job was a real person. But the reason I think a play is possible for this is because there's only 8 characters. We only have to keep up with eight characters. So it's real easy to keep in mind. It's real easy to attach, okay, who's in the room? There's only 8 people we have to keep up with. And a large part of this play, this drama that's lived out, happens in one place. The stage doesn't have to be switched very often. So the place where the drama is put out is, and I don't want to tell you what that stage is because I was shocked when I realized this. It presents itself as a drama, and it might help you as you get ahead of me, as you start reading the book of Job, to see it in that light. That might be helpful. One of the things I've found in the book of Job is Job doesn't necessarily say what a lot of preachers say it says. There's a lot of proof texting going along. There's a lot of reading one verse about Job or an activity here, but not seeing where that verse is said in a completely upside down way and meaning something completely different here. I want to read the book of Job as he intended the first readers to read that. And so as we get into that, you're going to see as we just dip our toe in the water this morning, you're going to see a lot of ideas that we just could launch off of. But I want to make sure that we understand the argument. And I'm going to tell you ahead of time that the answers are not going to satisfy us. There's something bigger that Job is after than an answer. When you're going through suffering, you feel like you're almost in a class and the teacher is droning on and on and on and you won't raise your hand. Is this going to be on the test? Do I really need to know this? I will tell you for the book of Job, yes. Yes, and some of you even right now are going through a season of testing. And you might be answering why, and asking why, and you wonder if I just knew why, it would make it okay. But Job tells us not necessarily. So I want us to prepare our hearts as we go into this book, and I'm real excited about how God is going to meet us. And I will tell you, here's the way I think God's going to work. I don't. When we get into the book of Job, you might say, Rod, why would you say that? But something you hear here is going to resonate on Wednesday or Thursday out there. Something's going to come up and, wow, Job. Okay, this is exactly what Job is addressing. It's going to ring in your spirit. Real, it's almost going to feel tangible the way this book unfolds in your spirit. So, the one other thing I want to say is we must accept the fact, this was one line I got from Ray Stedman, we must accept the fact that God does not exist for man, but man exists for God. I think a lot of times in living our lives, we think that God's up there just waiting. Okay, what does Rod need now? How can I be like Rod's beck and call? And somehow, especially as American Christians, we've gotten to a point where we think God exists for us instead of us existing for Him. Job's going to change your world. It's going to allow you to come to know someone and love someone that you've tried to know them and love them, but you've made them manageable. You've made them knowable to you. And once you come out on the other side of Job, hopefully your heart will love him and you'll say, I never knew you were like that, God. I never knew you were like that. Because what God ultimately gives Job is Himself. He lets him know Himself. So let's begin. We're going to cover the first 12 verses in the book of Job, just introducing you to this person. Job chapter 1, beginning in verse 1. If we were writing this today, we might have said once upon a time. Or in a land far, far away. You know, kind of like the Star Wars starts. But it starts, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. I want to say land of Oz, but it's Uz. Like Buzz, it's Uz. Whose name was Job. So we're introduced to a place where he lives. He lives east of Israel. He lives in a vast place. Some people, we don't know exactly where this place was, but we have a pretty good idea based on other things in the book. And he gives us his name. And he says two things about him, that he was blameless and he was upright. Now it doesn't say he was sinless. There's only been one person that's been sinless. But he was blameless. The idea of blameless is you could not connect any wrong to him. I think this word has more to do with the way other people perceived him. Other people, you just couldn't, you could accuse him of something, but if you were going to whisper behind his back and say, well, you know Job, person, no, not Job. No, he was perceived as being blameless, and the text tells us he was blameless. Nothing could stick to him. His life was such that he lived a life doing the best, not only the best he could, but he lived up to a standard, and other people accepted him as that. And it says upright. I think this has more to do with the view of him in the sight of God. And remember, this was before the Ten Commandments. This was before the priesthood, all of that. That's going to come in here in just a few minutes. He was one who feared God and turned away from evil. He was constantly aware of the presence that there was someone bigger than him that created the world, that created him. And so he lived not afraid of him, but in fear, in reverence, respect. His life was lived to where he wasn't going to hold his fist up to God. He was going to hold his arms open and his palms up to God. So he feared God and he shunned evil. And there was a lot of evil going around. You know how there's some people, it doesn't matter what city you put them in, they can sort out evil. They can find it. They know where the evil is. Job wasn't like that. He could find the righteousness. He turned away from evil. He didn't even want to get close to it. Then in verse 2, there were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He had a big family. 7 sons, I guess 1 son for every day of the week. He possessed 7,000 sheep. And a lot of times we get the idea that if you're going to be spiritual, you need to be poor. Job wasn't poor. 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camel, 500 yoke of oxen. How many oxen did he have? 1,000. In other words, the reason it puts it in there, he didn't say 500 oxen, 500 yoke of oxen. You would yoke the oxen together to work the fields. This is not a family farm. This is a big operation he has. 500 female donkeys and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. You know how you've never met Elon Musk, but you know his name. There's other people, you meet them and say, well, of course, everybody knows his name because of their wealth. Everyone knew Job's name. Job was wealthy. He was blameless. He was upright. He feared God. And he steered his life away from evil. Things are great. This is a person that you would want to know. This is a person that you would say, you know, this is a person I can trust with my possessions. This is a person I can trust with my heart. This is a person of character that I can trust. And Job was put on that pedestal. This is a person that if you knew somebody that was in his inner circle, you felt like, okay, I'm close to greatness. Isn't it interesting how we ascribe greatness to people who don't deserve it? People who don't deserve to be great, we say, great. Well, they were great. They're great. Well, they played a part in a movie, and we say, they must be a great person. Job was great. There was greatness about him. In the next verse, his sons used to go and hold a feast in the house, each one on his day. The idea or concept there is probably on each one on his birthday. He had seven sons. So, it's a family of 12. Mom and dad, 3 daughters, 7 sons. It's 12. And every time one particular son, it was his birthday on his month, he would say, everybody, come on over. Let's feast. Let's have a party. And they would end up going to each house on their particular birthday. That tells me several things. It tells me it's a close family. Job has done what he needed to do. This week, some people I looked at some of the comments. I don't know what position he has in government. His name's Sean Duffy. I don't know I forget what he does. But it made news because he didn't want his daughter to go to Harvard. And the reason why is he says, I'm responsible for her spiritual growth. I'm not going to just turn her over to the wolves. If there was a place that was bound, I've got friends of mine that have gone to Harvard, but it was interesting, that concept that came up, and people said, oh, he's trying to shelter her, No. He has invested in her 18 years in her spiritual development, in her development as a woman, in her character. And he doesn't want to see that just wiped out by people who are intent on breaking children. But Job raised his kids, and his kids loved each other. And he did that. They would have a feast. They would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with him. So it's all 12 of them get together for the birthday. And when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them. And he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For each child, he would go, and on behalf of his children, he would pray and offer burnt offerings. He would offer sacrifices to God. And he would do that whether there was a sin that they had committed or something they hadn't acknowledged. He wanted to cover his children. He stood between God and his children to present a God that was holy and just and loving to his children. And according to the number of them, for Job says, it may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did continually. Having the office that oversaw everything, having the big numbers, having the big operation, he still had time for his family, and his family mattered. Wouldn't you just like to get to know him? Don't you look at Job and say, this is a guy that cannot help but be successful? I have an acquaintance of mine. He's in the radio, TV, more in the radio, but business. And he says, people think, because he's won all these awards and everything, he says, people think that I'm smart. He says, I'm not smart. I just take on clients that I know are going to be winners anyway. They're going to be winners with me or without me. He said, I'd rather them be winners with me. Job is the kind of person, you look at his life and you look at his priorities and you look at his discipline, you say, this guy's going to win. I want to know this guy. I can learn something from this guy. Just being around this guy is going to rub off on me for me to be a better person. It's going to help me make better priorities. I like Job. Job's my friend. Job is my model. I might not can see God all the time, but I can look at Job. And I'm keeping my eye on Job in the storms because I know that Job has God's ear. And that God has Job's ears. And if you were envisioning this as a play, we would have Job come and he would sit in a chair, in a nice comfortable chair, and the narrator off the stage would end up telling you and reading you Job chapter 1 verses 1 through 5. If we were videotaping this, the camera would pan to the pictures of his kids and his family, the vacation trips. And here's the neat part. This is what people don't realize. If each kid is hosting on their birthday, what does that mean? That means the kids are gone. The kids are out of the house. Yay. You know, some of y'all had a hard time when that happened. Me and Mama, as soon as we closed the door, we were like, they gone. They out of the house. We love having them back. But we got our own house back. Job was in the perfect time of life. He had his health. He had his wife. He had his kids. He had his property. He had his job. His money, his possessions. And he had his God. And he was there. And then the lights after verse 5 would go down. The stage would be reset. We would move very quickly to a different dimension, a different place. Now the author is going to take us somewhere else, somewhere completely different. We're left with that idea and concept of Job just hanging there. And now we meet a whole different dimension. Let's look, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came along with them. In the Hebrew, there's a definite article there before Satan. It's the Satan. The Satan. And it has the idea of the accuser. The accuser comes. This book gives us an insight into something that no other book gives us insight into. For whatever reason, angels were coming to report to God, and for some reason, I wouldn't let him in if it were me, but I'm not God. But somehow the Satan comes in, and he's going to report to God. And so it says we're in a different scene now. The scene is heaven, the heavenly realm, and angels are coming and they're reporting, and the Satan comes in there as well. And verse 7 says this: the Lord said to the Satan, "From where have you come?" And the Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down on it." He just taking his time. Doesn't really have we know he's got a purpose, but he's just roaming, just seeing where he might be able to cause a little trouble, kick up a little sand, find a little dirt, be a little disruptive, go in where things are going just fine and be able to cause some trouble, being able to point out. And he's just roaming up and down. He's going up and down and to and fro over the earth. That's where he's been. And look at what it says. And this next part is just very hard for me. I'm just going to tell you. Verse 8. And the Lord said to Satan, or the Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" The Satan didn't bring up Job's name. God did. I got to tell you, this is probably the hardest verse in this book for me. It's like God is offering up. Satan's got enough things to do, going to and fro, up and down the earth. And God brings Job's name up. Have you considered my servant Job? When God talks about you and thinks about you, does he think about you in terms of being his servant? He did Job. Have you considered my servant Job? That there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man. Yeah, we got that. That's not just what people think of Job. This is what God thinks of Job. He's blameless and he's upright, who fears God and turns away from evil. It's like God says, you know what you've heard about Job? It's true. It's true. But he asked him, it's like, but God, what are you doing? Don't give the Satan Job's address. Don't do that. Why would you do it? Hasn't Job done enough to where he deserves to be protected by you? Hasn't Job done enough to where Satan does not even deserve to know his physical address? Why would you do that? He goes on, verse 9. Then the Satan answered the Lord and says, does Job fear God for no reason? Does Job love you just to love you? The Satan thinks, of course not. Job has his reasons. You and Job have made a deal. And Job serves you because he knows that's a good deal. That's a gravy train. Because look at how you've blessed him. Job, no. Job only serves you because of what you've done for him. Because in Job's world, Satan says, in Job's world, you exist for him. That's the accusation. He's the accuser now. And he goes on, verse 10. Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? The Satan says, when I look at Job, he is so blessed. And you've put a hedge, you've put a covering over everything that he has. And his possessions have increased in the land. He has followed you, he's obeyed you, and the end result of that obedience is prosperity. Prosperity in health, prosperity in relationships, prosperity in possessions. That's the end result here. And he goes on. Verse 11. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. It's almost like the Satan is bringing a report. He says, God, let me tell you the way it really is. Job only serves you because you're so good to him. But if you stretch out your hand, if you don't come through, if you vary just 1 degree off, he'll turn on you just like that. Because Job is still a man. Isn't that what the first verse said? There was a man. Job, at the basis of this book, it's about humanity. It's about being human. And I know, the Satan says, I know how all humans are. They only love God for what they can get from God. They only follow God for what they can find from God. And he will turn. If you touch him, he will turn. And so, the last verse we're going to cover today. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your hands. I almost want to envision that the whole stage shakes. What has God just done? He's turned over a man's life, an upright, blameless man, to Satan. Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. In other words, keep your hands off of him physically, but everything else is open game. So the Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. He flees. And our curtain comes down. Our curtain closes because we're wondering what happens. What's going to happen? What does that look like? And the rest of the book is what that looks like and the responses to that. There's more than 4 lessons, but I wrote down 4 things that I think that we can learn from this passage. Number 1, righteousness does not guarantee a trouble-free life. You can live uprightly. You can read your Bible. You can do everything exactly the way you believe God wants you to do it. And there's no guarantee that your life is going to be trouble-free. Just how it is. Number two, God sees what we cannot see. Job could have never seen what was going on in that heavenly realm. But God sees it. And are you okay with that? Are you okay with not knowing everything and the reason for everything that's going on in your life? God sees what we cannot see. Third, God is still sovereign even when life looks chaotic. Even when things are out of control. Even when things are, the wheels are coming off your car of life. The wheels are just all coming off. It's interesting. I know a guy. People really struggle with the book of Job. And it affects their view of God. And there is a view in some evangelical circles. It's called open theism. Here's the way the view looks. It says, there's evil in the world. There are bad things that happen to good people. And where it ends up landing is they say, God must not be able. Because if God was able, ... that wouldn't happen. And they create a God that's manageable. They create a God that's learning, that's growing. Yeah, that person's a fine Christian. That person has sacrificed. That person has been on the mission field. That person has done this and that. And yet these bad things happen. God must have not had their back. Why? Because God couldn't have their back. God's still learning. If there's one thing that you're going to get out of the book of Job is not that, but this is the book they use to teach that. It's called open theism. God is sovereign. And God is not there to just do every little whim that I want Him to do. And I take comfort in the fact that when I get to heaven, C.S. Lewis talked about this, when I get to heaven, I'm going to be able to look back and, well, isn't that I'll know everything, but I will be able to see things that I didn't know. And I'll go, oh, God was really wise in that. Keeping that promotion from me, God was wise. Allowing me to go through that horrible time, God was wise. Look at what God blessed me with. God is still sovereign. And you've got to believe that. You've got to believe that at the core of your being. Because if you don't believe that, then I don't know how you take another step in this life. If you don't believe that you've handed over to a sovereign God who has the power of doing that, a lot of times people say, well, God knows, but he doesn't act. What? God is sovereign. He sees the first from the last. Thirdly, there are dark forces that have aligned themselves against your life. There are destructive and dark forces who their agenda when they wake up every morning is to take your life and take it down. And only for the grace of God that He holds off those forces. But there are times when by God's sovereignty He allows those forces to be disruptive in your life. It's disruptive in the lives of your children. It's disruptive in your marriage. It's disruptive with your parents. It's disruptive at your job. It's disruptive in your church. There are forces at work. And if you don't believe that, you are going to be very naive and very disappointed. Very disappointed. We can say when we get to the end of this book, we might say, I lost something, but we're not going to be able to say God lost something. We say, I didn't understand this, but we're not going to be able to say God didn't understand it. This is life's unfolding drama. And the stage is set. And you can do your very best. And we're going to peek and we're going to look at what God might be doing. And when we get to the end of the book, I think we're going to come away with a picture of God that can be embraced. And I think, and I hope, even though I'm almost scared to get into this book, I hope God reveals something about himself to us as individuals. But, you know what people say. The Bible's an old book. It was written thousands of years ago. It has no relevance to our lives today. We've managed to go down the road where we can do just fine by ourselves. A person that has that attitude, maybe they don't need the book of Job. But I need it. And I think most of you need it. Let's pray. Father, thank you for a life that sought to reflect your goodness, that sought to trust you. Thank you for a life that is human, a life that was blessed, and yet a life that you chose to volunteer to represent what it means to be human. God, open our hearts to places that we don't want to go, but open our hearts to learning, to growing, to being fully human, to realizing we're fully loved by you. Thank you for Jesus, who suffered pain on Calvary's cross on our behalf. May that thought cause us to just love him more and more. It's in his name I pray. Amen.